So let's dive into our next thing. Our last week, I picked Titanic for us to discuss this week because you haven't seen it.
I had not
until
Friday night.
Friday night. And what did you think? I want your thoughts.
A couple things about it. A couple things that you mentioned, but also that, once I watched it, I realized it was true. It doesn't drag on at all for being 3 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it is.
If it was true, yeah, the ship did sink.
Yeah, but like, for those type of movies, sometimes I won't watch it all in one sitting, and I did. I watched this whole movie in one sitting because it just was interesting throughout. Like the character of Bill Paxton is basically the audience. That's kind of how that story goes. It's weird to not have. I mean, like I knew pretty much everything that was going to happen. I know the ship sinks. I know Leonardo DiCaprio dies. No way. But it's different when you actually see it. Like there's a couple. I cried 4 times in this movie. Just four times because it just got to me. I'm like, this is so well done.
It is a very emotional
and they weren't at parts that I expected. Like one of them was when they're actually standing on the deck and her arms are out. I've seen this a million times. It was in every trailer. It was at everything. But I'm like, but at that point, it's like these people. You know how the movie is going to end. You know the ship is sinking, and they're so hopeful about life, and it's so depressing in a way because it's not going to work out for most of these people.
Yeah, 100. I'm trying to remember. Like over 1,000 people passed away, died.
There was 2,200 people. 1,500 of them died.
1,500 died. Yeah, so 700 made it off, and
2/3 of them died. I'm not sure if it's how accurate it is, but in the movie they said that of the 1,500 that didn't get on the boats, only 6 of them lived. The people that were stuck in the water.
No, it's accurate. I guarantee you it's accurate just because James Cameron just did everything as accurate as possible. And he actually made several documentaries about it. He actually did a Mythbusters episode with the Mythbusters to show that... And they did prove that Leo, Jack Dawson, could stay on that...
on the door?
It was on the door.
Why?
With Rose. Oh, they showed like it was possible for them to survive if they like countered their weight right. But he's like, hey, it's a movie too, so give me a little.
See, at that point, I thought it made sense because if they're both on it, it's going to sink a little bit underwater. She's going to get more wet. They're both going to get wet and both going to drown.
Right.
And I didn't really think about, before I watched it, how cold the water was. But they did a really good job with the makeup and the effects of. Making them look very cold, and I was like, okay, that would really suck to be in basically sub-freezing water that's not going to freeze because it's the ocean. But
it was the North Atlantic. I mean, it was up there with like pretty close to Greenland and everything.
Yeah, most of the effects held up pretty well. There's some stuff like when it's a really wide shot of the ship and you see people walking. If you actually kind of focus on some of the people, they look pretty animated. They look not quite perfect, and like some of the water effects of when the ship is hitting the water and the waves, kind of like some of that.
The wake of the ship.
If you kind of like look closely at it, and for a second, it's just like white dots at the front, kind of. It doesn't. Like 90% of it holds up, but like compared to other movies that from '97, it's probably 100 times better. And even like stuff that came out 10 years later, it probably is better. But it's not as good as what they can do today. But that's nothing against it.
Yeah, 23 years ago. I mean, this was at the time the most had the biggest budget of all time at the time. At $200 million, and of course they thought it was going to bomb just because James Cameron went over budget, and it like $200 million for this 3.5-hour movie.
It's ridiculous.
And it's like there's no way we're going to make the movie, the money back. And of course it made like 20. I think it did like 23, 24 million in its first weekend. Didn't do a whole lot, but then the second weekend it did the same thing, and then the third weekend it did like 30 million, and then the weekend like it just kept making these little amounts, and it kept. And I think for like 3 months it sat on the top, and of course it made like over $600 million in its initial run, and like over. It was the first movie to make over $1 billion. I think it was like 1.8, and then it went over $2 billion when they did the re-release for its anniversary.
I remember
But,
when it came out, my parents went to the theater to see it, and it was sold out, so they came home. This was like, but it was such like a word of mouth film. Like, you got to go see Titanic. I remember that back then. But I think one part that really holds up is the actual sinking of the ship. That part looked great. Everything about that, because it was mostly all practical. They built like that whole section to kind of sink. I watched some of the behind the scenes stuff because I have the Blu-ray, which I never watched until Friday. But I think it's my favorite James Cameron film.
Of all his movies,
I think it's my favorite. Yeah, and
I think it is too for me, because every time I kind of revisit it, I get sucked into it again, and I'm like, oh man, this is such a great movie. Because when I first watched it, I was 13, and I didn't like it when I first watched it. It was just like, man, this is overly long. I didn't really care for it. And then like maybe 10, 15 years later, I revisited the movie, and I watched it, and I was like, why did I not like this the first time I watched it? It's such a well-made movie. Everything, there's the detail, the way the sets are built, the music, it all flows together in one great harmonious.
It's a perfect
story.
film. I thought there's a couple things I also thought, like I thought the Celine Dion's like motif that that you always hear throughout the movie. I mean, it's not Celine Dion, but it's
it's James
Horner. But
Horner's.
I thought it was going to get. I thought when I was going into it, like, I'm going to just hear that and kind of think it's cheesy or something, because it's kind of parody after a while, But it just wasn't that way at all. Like, the song still kind of got to me. Like, it's still like, it still is effective.
Oh, it has meaning.
I think it's his best movie, and I think it's a perfect movie. Probably my top 10 movies of all time after seeing it.
I think you have any criticisms other than you said the.
No, I don't have any criticisms.
There was this one criticism I have on it, and it was a little bit of Leonardo DiCaprio. Mm-hmm. Was I think some of his acting was a little on the flat side when it came to certain things. I'm not saying his entire performance was that way, but there were just certain things he said that just didn't come off like it was honest. It was like it seemed like him just acting, but not at the caliber he is now.
Yeah. Maybe he's improved since then, but I thought he was great.
Oh, he's improved for sure. Like, he's one of our greatest actors ever. But when you, but there's just some scenes, like with the gambling scene at the very beginning, when some of the lines he says, just is a little cheesy. Just doesn't come off the way he should have. But
I really like Billy Zane in the movie. I thought he was great.
Not even God could sink this ship. It's like, no, he's going to do it. You know? But I'm sitting there trying to think of certain parts of that film. They had the bad guy from Tron. I forget he's in it until I watch it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember.
He was always the guy. He was like the henchman for Billy Zane's character.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
He's like in Ninja Turtles 2. He's in Star Trek 5 and 6. Undiscovered. He played the Klingon in one of them, and a human in the fifth one. But yeah, I mean, he's in a lot of stuff. He's like an English actor, like a theatrical actor.
Yeah.
But he's like one of my childhood. He's like the villain in all my childhood films.
Yeah.
But when I saw him as the henchman, I'm like, hey, it's that guy. But I'm trying to remember. I mean, actually, when you were talking about the wreck of the Titanic, when it was breaking apart, the ship itself and everything like that, James Cameron came back and did a documentary on the 100th anniversary and showed that is now wrong, what happened in the film.
Oh, really?
It didn't happen exactly the way that he filmed it. It's supposedly like the ship, at the very end, the ship kind of goes up, it tilts up to where it's sitting at 90 degrees in the water, and then it starts going down. Well, I guess now, when it breaks off, it kind of comes at almost at 70 degrees, and it doesn't go straight down. It kind of sinks, kind of rolls over and sinks in that way. So some things were different. He really got into the involved in how it went down and the dynamics of how it hit the ground and the way it hit and the way it broke apart. And I was actually telling you about that documentary, the Ghosts of the Abyss, which is something you should check out. Where James Cameron did a documentary on it, I think 4 years later for IMAX, and I watched it in IMAX. And he brings Bill Paxton back, and they actually go down and visit the wreck several times. And this happened around the time of September 11th of 2001. And it was great because what he did was he filmed the wreck and then he filmed the actors and overlaid them on top of the wreck when they were discussing what they were doing at certain points of time during the sinking of the ship. And they would show like their ghosts in the room underwater and what they were doing. And I'm like, oh, this is almost chilling seeing these people, what they were doing at, underneath the water in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Worth checking out for sure.
Okay. What's it called? Ghost of the Abyss?
Ghost of the Abyss.
Ghost of the Abyss. I will check that out. Yeah.
And you can probably find it on Prime, but if anybody hasn't seen, other than this past Friday, hasn't seen Titanic, you should definitely check out Titanic.
Yes, definitely check it out. And sorry I spoiled that the ship sinks.
Yes. It only happened, what?
110 years ago? 108 years ago. What was it? 1912?
Went down in 1912.
Yeah, 108.
April 15th, 1912. Actually, that was my grandma's birthday. Yeah. Not the year, but the day. Tax day.
Great. Exciting
what
stuff.
What a great day.
Should we talk about what next week's movie going to be?
Yeah, so give us the movie to see next week.
It's a movie I saw a few weeks ago. I don't think you've seen it yet. I don't think you had seen it at this time, but you should. Okay. It's called Velvet Buzzsaw.
Velvet Buzzsaw. That's a Netflix movie that we talked about last week.
Directed by Dan Gilroy, who did Nightcrawler. And it's Jake Gyllenhaal.
It's Gyllenhaal.
I'm never going to pronounce his name right. I can never remember.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
And just go see it and we'll talk about it next week. I don't want to tell you what it's about. I told you it's kind of he's an art critic, but that's as far as I'm going to go. Just watch it.
Is he just as strange as he is in the other
film? He is pretty strange, yeah. But I mean, so is everybody in this movie.
Right.
Yep.
Well, all right.
There you go.
I will watch that. Good. I will watch it, and we'll get into it next week, next Wednesday.
Sounds good.
So, I guess with that being said, that's the end of our show. Thank you guys for joining us, and tune in next time for another episode of Too Darn Loud. I'm Livingston Odin.
And I'm Taylor Olson.
Till next time.
Bye.